I'm going to show you how you can take your coding to the absolute next level. Even if you've been coding for a few months or coding for 10 years, Rxjs or Rx in any language, reactive programming will allow you to take your coding to the next level. And you may think, what is that? Well, let me start at the beginning. What is the problem? The problem is that applications are complex in 2020. It's not as simple as it used to be. There is a lot of technology to learn, a lot of external and internal communications going on. Some of them synchronously, some of them asynchronously. You have multiple components on a page, displaying different data, getting data from different places, events happening around the page, user interaction, data coming in at different times. And we combine these different data and map them and merge them together to display the data more user-friendly for the user. You're probably using things like filter, map, debounce. Let's just recap. We've got user interactions happening whenever the user decides, and then we've got those events firing off maybe HTTP third-party events, and they come back whenever they're ready. So we've got all these different things going on. So how can we all keep track of that in an easy way without having loads of verbose extra code that becomes hard to test and hard to maintain? Well, the solution is the observer pattern. The observer design pattern is used in lots of frameworks, from Spring to Angular using Rxjs, and you can use Rxjs in React and in Vue, even in more vanilla projects. In a nutshell, you have an observer and you have a subject, and the observer waits for changes in the subject. Rather than having all these users, all these requests, poll or check if data has changed, you reverse it. Rather than pull, you do push. They all subscribe in and observe and wait. And when the subject has a data change, it just notifies all the observers that something's happened. So it's really more efficient. And one piece of work is done and can let 10 observers watching know, rather than 10 observers keep requesting, has it changed, has it changed? And you might be aware of this with PubSub or WebSocket, where you're keeping things up to date in real time. And the multiple observers, multiple subjects makes it really interesting. And then with this happening, you can chain together operators that allow you to manipulate the real-time data has come in as soon as that event has changed. You can do maps, you can do filters, you can even stop observing if you need to. There's a whole raft. You can do your own custom operators too. And there is a TC39 JavaScript proposal to get the Rxjs library, the reactive coding, natively into JavaScript. So watch this space. You want to get ahead of the game and not only step up your coding, but you want to be ahead of the game so when it does come in natively, you already know how to do it. Remember when await and async came in? Don't you want to be ahead of that? This can also be used not only with promises, but with arrays, with timers, with so many things I want to show you. So let's get into Rxjs. Rxjs library is used for composing asynchronous and event-based programs by using observable sequences. The quote they use on their website is, think of Rxjs as for Lodash, but for events. You have observables. They source future values and events. You have the observer, which listens for changes. You have the subscription, which executes the observable. Then you have operators. These are pure functions like map and filter, and we're going to go into some examples shortly. And you have subjects, which multicast to multiple observers. And then you get schedulers, centralized dispatchers like set timeout. Now that we've headed over to my computer, let me show you actually how Rxjs works. I've imported Rxjs over from their CDN. And you can do this on the node side, create a range from 1 to 200. And then we're going to subscribe to it and output the data. And you'll see on the right hand side here, it goes from 1 to 200 really quickly as the page loads. So let's make it more interesting. Let's add some operators. So we need to include a pipe, and now we can add some operators. So let's, for example, take the first 10 only and then stop. So if I refresh the page, what do we expect to see? We expect to see the first 10 and then the event stop because it unsubscribes. Okay, that's not so interesting, but it's nice that you can kind of control it. And you can also not just do takes, you can do conditions where something happens or another event is fired, then this stops, or some user interaction. Let's filter it. So now we want to remove unwanted values. So if we refresh that, now we're putting a filter, outputs have reduced and we're filtering out the results we don't want. If we do a map, you can see the numbers have now changed. We're taking the first 10 and then stopping, but for each value, we're doing a filter, so we're removing values we don't want, and then we're mapping those values. And then on the subscribe, we output. Hopefully that makes sense. It's not a very practical example, but it's just kind of getting you into it. We'll get into some much more practical examples. Okay, let's now look at a more realistic example. So we have the go button, the stop button, and then we say from event, the click event on the button, on the go button. And then we're going to have an actual operator. So in the pipe, we say take until, so keep going, keep listening for events until the stop button event is clicked. Then we subscribe to it and we want to output the event of the go button, and we're outputting the position X and Y. So let's have a look at this. So if I hit go near the top left of the button, and it will make sense why, at position 11:11 it got clicked. If I go down to the bottom left, 11:24 it got clicked. If I go to the top right, it's kind of 41:24 as we expect, and I can kind of go in the middle and keep clicking, and all these events, no matter where I click on this, we get a different number and the events keep going. So let me hit stop, and now let me hit go. Because that event got triggered, now wherever I hit on the go, nothing is happening because I hit the stop and the stop had a take until. So keep going, keep listening until. So now by doing that, it is unsubscribed. It's not filtering any out, it is unsubscribed completely. So no more events are being listened to. So that's more of a realistic example. So the next one we're going to look at is mouse movements. So again, we've got from event, from the document, mouse move, and I've got a pipe where I'm throttling the time, and then a subscribe. Let's see what happens. As I move my mouse over the document, every 500 milliseconds, it will take a new reading. If I stop moving, nothing happens. We can have a filter and say only where Y is greater than 500. So if I go into the top section, move the mouse, nothing happens. If I come down below 500, things start happening again. If I go back up to the top, it stops. So we're filtering out events. And so now if we add a map, we can add X and Y together. So nothing happens at the top because it's filtered out. And as I come down, you can see the number grows and grows and grows and grows if I go increase the X and increase the Y, or either of them. If I come back to the below the 500 area, nothing happens. Let's get onto the really interesting stuff now as well, even more interesting than that. We're going to look at subjects. So I've created a subject and we're going to subscribe to it 5 times and then send 2 messages or 2 events. We get all of the subscribers output. So the subscribers 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5 output message 1, output message 2, as we expect. You're thinking, well, that's not really that exciting. Things that we can do, say, what happens if I move subscriber 5 to after all of the messages, and I move subscriber 4 to after message 1? Let's have a look. So what you get is subscribers 1, 2, and 3 will output the first message because they subscribed before the message was sent. Subscription 4 subscribes after message 1, so it won't get that. But then for message 2, you get subscription 1, 2, 3, and 4, but 5 never appears because it subscribes after both of the events. And you may think, okay, that makes sense, but that's not very useful. What happens if I subscribe afterwards and I want the previous event? We will get onto that, don't you worry. But in its vanilla basic form, you need to subscribe to get the messages. So with the behavior subject, with an initial message, so as soon as something subscribes, it gets an event straight away. When we create the behavior subject, I've just put message as a string. We have 1 subscription and 2 subscription, and then we send messages 1 and 2, and then we have a 3rd subscription. You get subscription 1 and 2 get message, then subscription 1 and 2 get message 1 and message 2, and then subscription 3 just gets message with no number, because that's the default message or event to send when there's a new subscriber. Okay, now let's look at the replay subject. This is when it gets even more exciting. Hopefully you're having fun, you're realizing the power of Rxjs. I'm just literally scratching the surface, but it's going to get really exciting. So replay subject keeps a history. So in this case, when you create a replay subject, you put in how many messages to keep. So in this case, I got subscription 1, then subscription 2, then I send out 4 messages, and then I've got a subscription 3. So let's have a look what happened. Subscription 1 and subscription 2 output message 1, 2, 3, and 4, and then subscription 3 subscribes and it outputs message 3 and 4 because the replay subject is keeping a history of 2. And you can change this to 1, So 3, so if I put it into 1, and let's reload the page, you can see again, subscription 1 and 2, output messages 1 and 2, 3 and 4. But then the third subscription only outputs message 4, because we're only keeping a history of 1. Hopefully you've enjoyed that, and hopefully you see the power and the benefit of Rxjs and why you should really be using it to send messages and events around your application. It really decouples your application. If you had at the top right the user profile and the user goes into the account and updates something about their profile, push out an event, notify everywhere in the application that is looking for that bit of profile information, and it'll automatically get updated. So you can update parts of the application in real time without trying to maintain state.